Words once danced, now hide away. Life's canvas waits for dreams to play. Here I sit, the pen unswayed. In dreams I soar, then fears invade. Yet as the night stretches long, in dreams I find my forgotten song. The words will flow, the ink will spill, like blood. A man jolts awake, his face etched with terror. The remnants of his nightmare cling to him, leaving him visibly shaken. His name is Kabir. He's at a desk filled with different items neatly arranged. He glances at his laptop, which shows a blank document. He talks to himself, expressing concern about not having enough time. He seems stressed and under a lot of pressure. Something important is due soon. He slams the table in frustration. In Kabir's mind, we see a distorted version of his publisher. She sits in a small office, enjoying a meal, and seems very content. She communicates with him about his deadline, informing him only 2 months remain to complete his work. This adds to his stress and frustration. We return to Kabir in his study room. He lights a cigarette and tries to focus on writing, but struggles greatly. His fingers hover over the keyboard, and he starts tapping his foot nervously. Overwhelmed, he stands up and walks over to a photo frame showing him and his wife, which makes him roll his eyes and shake his head in frustration. Suddenly, he has a spark of an idea. He rushes back to his laptop, and then the door suddenly slams open, startling him and making him clench his fists in frustration. Kabir is not pleased by the disturbance. Kabir's wife, Kalpana, steps into the room. She looks professional and carries the air of someone who has been successful on her own. At the moment, she is the breadwinner of the house. Notably, she's pregnant, about 5 months along. As soon as she enters, she notices the smell of cigarette smoke, which bothers her because of her condition. Kalpana asks Kabir how his day was, hoping for a pleasant conversation. Kabir responds coldly and doesn't turn to face her, staying focused on his work. She probes a bit more about his writing progress, hoping for him to share more. However, Kabir imagines snapping at her harshly, but keeps these thoughts to himself. He instead chooses to reply minimally, indicating that he wants to keep working undisturbed. Kalpana senses his mood and decides not to push further. She mentions dinner before quietly leaving the room, feeling a bit sad and dismissed. That night, Kabir experiences a disturbing dream. His study room appears burnt and destroyed, signaling chaos and ruin. In this nightmare, he sees himself and Kalpana lying unconscious in their living room. That dreadful image snaps Kabir out from his sleep. He wakes up in his bedroom, sweating and shaken by the nightmare. He finds it hard to fall back asleep, tossing and turning with unease. Unable to sleep, Kabir goes to the bathroom, where he tries to relieve his stress in private. This act shows his increasing isolation and how he handles his frustrations alone. As a new day dawns, Kabir is at his desk. He tries to write, but the words don't come. He smokes, paces around the room, and ignores calls from his publisher. His frustration mounts. He taps his foot, massages his shoulder, and tries to jot down notes, but ends up breaking the pencil in anger and throwing away the paper. In a burst of fury, Kabir shouts out loud, letting out all his stress and anger, but there's no one to hear him. His outburst doesn't seem to relieve his tension. Overwhelmed by his emotions, Kabir retreats to the bathroom again, where he vents his frustrations in private. This scene mirrors his previous actions under stress, highlighting a pattern in his behavior when dealing with overwhelming emotions. Returning to the study room, Kabir appears calmer. He sits quietly, thinking about the looming deadline. One uneventful evening, Kalpana stands looking at herself in the mirror. She's further along in her pregnancy now, and she talks softly and laughs on the phone, a stark contrast to Kabir's turmoil. Kabir watches her, suspicion evident in his demeanor. His trust seems to be waning, feeding into the growing distance between them. Later that night, while Kalpana sleeps peacefully, Kabir lies awake. His mind is restless, and he reaches out to touch Kalpana, seeking some connection. But she gently refuses, asking to be left alone to sleep because she has to wake up early. Frustrated and unable to sleep, Kabir gets out of bed, his mind clearly troubled. In his frustration, Kabir goes back to the bathroom, his refuge for private moments. His actions are becoming repetitive, showing how he handles stress and isolation. As days pass, Kabir's routine continues to be punctuated by stress-relieving habits. He drinks milk, prepares to smoke, and ignores a call from his wife. He's slowly withdrawing from responsibilities and retreating into himself. Kabir lies on his bed, eyes closed, drifting into a dream. He imagines flying above the clouds and then traveling through space at incredible speeds. He flies through a huge brain, feeling like he's exploring his own thoughts. Then, he moves through a big heart that beats around him. He sees changing faces showing different feelings, and a hand with an eye that watches him. His journey ends with mountains. When he opens his eyes, there's a fleeting smile, suggesting he might have found some inspiration or solace in his daydreams. Back in the study room, Kabir feels a moment of clarity and begins to type with newfound energy. But this moment is short-lived as the door slams open again, and he's visibly frustrated. He clenches his fists, struggling to maintain his composure. Kalpana enters, bringing with her news of guests for dinner, trying to maintain normalcy. Kabir, however, is far from pleased, feeling further disturbed and isolated. In the kitchen, Kalpana prepares food in the microwave, a mundane domestic scene that quickly turns tense. Kabir confronts her, his anger barely contained. He lashes out verbally, disrupting the peace and startling Kalpana, who is just trying to manage the situation. Her response is tempered, trying to calm the storm, but Kabir's frustration is palpable. He yells at her for disturbing him and proceeds to mock her by asking if he needs to put up a "do not disturb" sign on his head. At that moment, Kalpana makes a cardinal sin. She tells him to calm down, which angers Kabir even more. He screams at her, explaining that his work is creative and that he needs to think. If she keeps disturbing him, how is he going to focus? Kalpana, shocked at his statements, tells him that she's working hard too, to run the house, for them, for the baby. Kabir, twisted in his mind, takes another meaning out of it. He makes it about who's earning and who's not. He sarcastically and mockingly thanks her for taking care of the house and taking care of him. Kalpana is embarrassed. Her friends are outside. They're listening to this. She tells Kabir to stop. She tells him not to create a scene and to calm down. Kabir, in a fit of unbearable anger, picks up a utensil and throws it and asks her not to be afraid to create a scene. Just then, the microwave starts beeping. That jolts him out of it. Kabir scoffs and leaves a fearful Kalpana alone in the kitchen. She can't believe what just happened. In the living room, friends of Kalpana hear the quarrel. They sit awkwardly, unsure of how to respond, as Kalpana returns to them with a forced smile. At the dinner table, the tension is palpable. The friends eat quietly, and Kalpana tries to keep a brave face, occasionally taking sips of wine to ease her discomfort. Later that night, Kalpana, despite the earlier tension, enters without knocking. The room is smoky and she coughs, showing her irritation. Kabir ignores her presence initially, continuing to smoke. Kalpana tries to start a conversation about their issues, but Kabir is dismissive, indicating he prefers to be left alone. Kalpana, determined to address their problems, presses on. She points out Kabir's lack of progress and the looming deadline. Kabir, feeling cornered, defensively states he wants to handle his problems alone. The discussion escalates as Kalpana stresses that they need to face their issues together, especially with a baby on the way. Kabir harshly dismisses the importance of the baby and the relationship, hinting he suspects the baby isn't his due to Kalpana's suspicious phone calls. This accusation marks a breaking point, leading to Kalpana's angry and hurt reaction. She decides to walk away from him, but not without a final blow. She mocks him, calls him impotent, and faces him with a fearless aura, unafraid of the consequence. Kabir's mind slips into a dark vision where he imagines lashing out at Kalpana with extreme violence, a reflection of his inner turmoil and rage. This imagination is brutal and intense, showing his struggle to control his darker impulses. The next day, a knock at the door stirs Kabir from his slumber at the desk. He's confused and weary as he finds Kalpana at the door, who seems calm. She mentions leaving for work and apologizes for the harsh words exchanged, suggesting they both need to work on their issues. Kabir is visibly perplexed. After Kalpana leaves for work, Kabir tries to refocus on his writing. That night, after a long time, Kabir sleeps peacefully. The next day, as he tries to work, he notices an unpleasant smell in the room and uses air freshener to mask it. His attempt to enter the bathroom is halted by flashes of his violent visions, and he retreats, disturbed by his own thoughts. Later, Kalpana catches Kabir in a private moment. Kabir is embarrassed. Kalpana offers to help. That night, Kabir and Kalpana share a moment of intimacy, a brief reprieve from their ongoing tensions. However, Kabir's mind continues to blur reality with his nightmares, causing him to question himself. Over the following days, Kabir's mental state deteriorates. He smells strange odors, sees disturbing sights, and hears unsettling sounds around him. His reality seems to warp as he tries to make sense of his thoughts. In a dreamlike state, Kabir revisits a traumatic childhood memory. His teacher, a harsh figure, threatens and punishes him, intertwining his past fears with his current anxieties. With all the strength the teacher can accumulate, she raises her hand and smacks his knuckles with a wooden ruler. Back in reality, Kabir flinches and wakes up to a disordered environment. He believes someone has tampered with his things, creating chaos on his desk and around the room. Kalpana rushes in to help, but he is nearly hysterical, trapped in his visions of disorder and paranoia. Kalpana points out that there is nothing wrong with his desk or the room. Kabir, clearly shaken, darts his eyes around the room to find that everything is in order and in its rightful place. He feels like he's lost it. Later that evening, the bedroom becomes a temporary sanctuary. Kabir, emotionally exhausted and clinging to any semblance of comfort, holds on to Kalpana as they lie in bed. She tries to offer reassurance and comfort, holding him close like a child seeking solace from a nightmare. For a moment, they find peace in each other's presence, a stark contrast to the chaos of their recent interactions. The next few days are a roller coaster. Kabir becomes increasingly isolated in his study room, his behavior growing more erratic. He paces, smokes incessantly, and sprays air freshener to combat the persistent bad odor he can't seem to escape. His phone rings repeatedly, but he ignores them all, throwing the phone in the trash bin in frustration. His focus narrows obsessively on his writing, hinting at some progress, but his mental state continues to deteriorate. In a moment of intense frustration, Kabir's emotions boil over. He stands in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at his reflection with growing anger. He shouts at himself to write, his voice echoing off the walls as if trying to command his mind to function despite its unraveling. The house phone bell rings non-stop, but it is ignored and unattended, symbolizing Kabir's complete withdrawal from everything outside his immediate surroundings. Through the madness, through the growing anxieties, through the darkness, Kabir writes vehemently, as if his life is on the line. As the deadline arrives, Kabir types "the end" on his manuscript, a moment of triumph mixed with paranoia. He retrieves his phone from the trash, ready to reconnect with the outside world, but his sense of accomplishment is short-lived. An unexpected call from an unknown number catches him off guard. The caller, from Kalpana's workplace, inquires about her recent absence, adding to Kabir's confusion and suspicion. He throws the phone in a hysterical fit and talks to himself. "The baby is definitely not mine," he yells. He accuses her of cheating. Driven by frustration and deceit, Kabir confronts the reality he has been avoiding. He opens the bathroom door to find a shocking scene: Kalpana's lifeless body. He recoils in horror, struggling to comprehend the sight before him. His mind races, grappling with the implications of what he sees and the disjointed memories of the past weeks. As Kabir stands in shock, the door to the study room slams open. To his disbelief, Kalpana appears at the door, alive and seemingly unharmed. Confused and terrified, he points to the bathroom, insisting on the gruesome discovery. Kalpana, calm and composed, checks the bathroom and reassures him there's nothing amiss. She attempts to soothe him, suggesting his visions are just illusions. He inquires about her not going to work, and she simply smiles at him and tells him, "Where else would I be?" In the bedroom, Kalpana comforts Kabir as he sits in disbelief. Then, we see Kabir with her lifeless body lying beside him, suggesting a split between reality and his mental breakdown. He's unaware of what is real and what is a product of his fractured psyche. As the story concludes, we'd ask, who knew that a writer's block would lead to such a broken mind? We're left wondering about the line between reality and illusion. What do you think happened? Was it all real, or did Kabir conjure up all this in his mind? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know how you interpreted the events of the story. Should this story's echo resonate with you, hit the like button, turn on the notification bell, and share it with fellow seekers of truth and mystery. Your insights are the keys to unraveling the enigma of Kabir's world. And remember, if you ever find yourself struggling with writer's block, just